Hello and welcome to Bookspot. I'm Earl Weinberg. This time we continue our reading of Citizen of the Galaxy by Robert Heinlein. Our hero Thorby finds himself the heir to a billion-dollar interstellar financial empire, one he is not allowed to control or know about. So after enough frustration, he's gone and found himself a lawyer, a Mr. Garsh. You'll represent me? You talk, I listen, Garsh repeated. Maybe I'll go to sleep. I ain't feeling my best today. I never do. All right, Thorby launched into it. Garsh listened with eyes closed, fingers laced over his bulge. That's all, concluded Thorby, except that I'm anxious to get straightened out so I can go back into the guard. Garsh, for the first time, showed interest. Rudbeck of Rudbeck in the guard? Let's not be silly, son. I'm not really Rudbeck of Rudbeck. I'm an enlisted guardsman who got pitched into it by circumstances beyond my control. I knew that part of your story. The throb writers ate it up. But we all got circumstances we can't control. Point is, a man doesn't quit his job, not when it's his. It's not mine, Thorby answered stubbornly. Let's not fiddle. First, we get your parents declared dead. Second, we demand their wills and proxies. If they make a fuss, we get a court order, and even the mighty Rudbeck folds up under a simple subpoena or be locked up for contempt. He bit a fingernail. Might be some time before the estate is settled and you're qualified. Court might appoint you to act, or the wills might say who, or the court might appoint somebody else, but it won't be those two if what you say is correct. Even one of Bruder's pocket judges wouldn't dare. It would be too raw, and he'd know he'd be reversed. But what can I do if they won't even start the action to have my parents declared dead? Who told you you had to wait on them? You're the interested party. They may not even qualify as amicus curiae. If I recall the gossip, they're hired hands, qualified with one nominal share each. You're the number one interested party, so you start the action. Other relatives? First cousins, maybe? No first cousins. I don't know what other heirs there may be. There's my grandparents Bradley. Didn't know they were alive. Will they fight you? Thorby started to say no, changed his mind. I don't know. Cross it when we come to it. Other heirs? Well, we won't know till we get a squint at the wills, and that probably won't happen until a court forces them. Any objection to hypnotic evidence? Truth drugs? Lie detectors? No. Why? You're the best witness that they're dead, not just long time missing. But if a person is missing long enough? Depends. Any term of years is just a guide to the court, not a rule of law. Time was when 7 years would do it, but that's no longer true. Things are roomier now. How do we start? Got any money, or have they got you hog-tied on that? I come high. I usually charge for each exhale and inhale. Well, I've got a megabuck, and a few thousand more, about 8. Haven't said I'd take this case. Has it occurred to you that your life may be in danger? Huh? No, it hasn't. Son, people do odd things for money, but they'll do still more drastic things for power over money. Anybody sitting close to 1 billion credits is in danger. It's like keeping a pet rattlesnake. If I were you and started feeling ill, I'd pick my own doctor. I'd be cautious about going through doors and standing close to open windows. He thought. Rudbeck is not a good place for you now. Don't tempt them. Matter of fact, you ought not to be here. Belong to the diplomatic club? No, sir. You do now. People would be surprised if you didn't. I'm often there around 6. Got a room there, sort of private. 2011. 2011. I still haven't said I'd take it. Got any idea what I'd have to do if I lose this case? No, sir. What was that place you mentioned? Jubalpur? That's where I'd have to move. Suddenly he grinned. But I've been spoiling for a fight. Rudbeck, eh? Bruder. You mentioned a megabuck? Thorby got out his book of checking certificates, passed them over. Garsh riffled through it, shoved it into a drawer. We won't convert this now. They're almost certainly noting your withdrawals. Anyhow, it's going to cost you more. Goodbye, say in a couple of days. Thorby left, feeling bucked up. He had never met a more mercenary, predatory old man. He reminded Thorby of the old, scarred freedmen professionals who swaggered around the new amphitheater. As he came outdoors, he saw guard headquarters. He looked again, then ducked through the murderous traffic and ran up its steps. Chapter 21. Thorby found a circle of receptionist booths around the great foyer. He pushed through crowds pouring out and went into one. A contralto voice said, "Punch your name, State Department, and office into the microphone. Wait until the light appears, then state your business. You are reminded that working hours are over and only emergencies are now handled." Thorby punched Thorby Baslam into the machine, then said, "Exotic Corps." He waited. The tape repeated, "Punch your name, state the department, and office into—" Then it suddenly cut off. A man's voice said, "Repeat that." "Exotic Corps." "Business?" "Better check my name in your files." At last another female voice chanted, "Follow the light immediately over your head. Do not lose it." He followed it up escalators, down slideways, and into an unmarked door where a man not in uniform led him through two more. He faced another man in civilian clothes who stood up and said, "Rudbeck of Rudbeck, I am Wing Marshal Smith." "Thorby Baslam, please, sir, not Rudbeck." "Names aren't important, but identities are. Mine isn't Smith, but it will do. I suppose you have identification?" Thorby produced his ID again. "You probably have my fingerprints. They'll be here in a moment. Do you mind supplying them again?" While Thorby had his prints taken, a print file card popped out onto the marshal's desk. He put both sets into a comparator, seemed to pay no attention, but until it flashed green, he spoke only politenesses. Then he said, "All right, Thorby Baslam Rudbeck, what can I do for you?" "Maybe it's what I can do for you." "So?" "I came here for two reasons," Thorby stated. "The first is, I think I can add something to Colonel Baslam's final report." "You know who I mean?" "I knew him and admired him very much. Go on." "The second is, I'd like to go back into the Guard and go X-Corps." Thorby couldn't recall when he had decided this, but he had, not just Pop's outfit, Pop's own corps, Pop's work. Smith raised his brows. "So, Rudbeck of Rudbeck?" "I'm getting that fixed." Thorby sketched rapidly how he must settle his parents' estate, arrange for handling of their affairs. "Then I'm free. I know it's presumptuous of an acting ordnanceman third class—" "Oh, no, I was busted from that. I had a fight. For a boot guardsman to talk about X-Corps, but I think I've got things you could use. I know the people, the free traders, I mean. I speak several languages. I know how to behave in the 9 worlds. I've been around a bit, not much, and I'm no astrogator, but I've traveled a little. Besides that, I've seen how Colonel Baslam, worked. Maybe I could do some of it." "You have to love this work to do it. Lots of times it's nasty. Things a man wouldn't do for his own self-respect if he didn't think it was necessary." "But I do. I was a slave. You knew that? Maybe it would help if a man knew how a slave feels." "Perhaps, though it might make you too emotional. Besides, slave traffic isn't all we're interested in. A man comes here, we don't promise him certain work. He does what he's told. We use him. We usually use him up. Our casualty rate is high." "I'll do what I'm told. I just happen to be interested in the slave trade. Why, most people here don't seem to know it exists." "Most of what we deal in, the public wouldn't believe. Can you expect the people you see around you to take seriously unbelievable stories about faraway places? You must remember that less than 1% of the race ever leaves its various planets of birth." "I suppose so. Anyhow, they don't believe it." "That's not our worst handicap. The Terran hegemony is no empire. It is simply leadership in a loose confederation of planets. The difference between what the Guard could do and what it is allowed to do is very frustrating. If you have come here thinking that you will see slavery abolished in your lifetime, disabuse your mind. Our most optimistic target date is 2 centuries away. And by that time, slavery will have broken out in planets not even discovered today. Not a problem to be solved once and for all, a continuing process. All I want to know is, can I help? I don't know. Not because you describe yourself as a junior enlisted man. We're all pretty much the same rank in this place. The Exotic Corps is an idea, not an organization chart. I'm not worried about what Thorby Baslam can do. He can do something, even if it's only translating. But Rudbeck of Rudbeck? I wonder. But I told you I was getting rid of that. Well, let's wait until you have. By your own statement, you are not presenting yourself for enrollment today. What about the other reason? Something to add to Colonel Baslam's report? Thorby hesitated. Sir, Colonel Brisby, my CO, told me that Colonel Baslam had provided a connection between the slave trade and some big starship building outfit. He told you that? Yes, sir. You could look it up in Colonel Baslam's report. I don't need to. Go on. Well, is it Rudbeck he was talking about? Galactic transport, that is? Smith considered it. Why ask me if your company is mixed up in the slave trade? You tell us. Thorby frowned. Is there a galactoview around here? Down the hall. May I use it? Why not? The wing marshal led him through a private corridor into a conference room dominated by a star-flecked stereo display. It was much the biggest Thorby had ever seen. He had to ask questions. It had complicated controls. Then he got to work. His face puckered with strain, Thorby painted the colored lights amid the fairy stars in the solid picture he had built in the galactoview in his office. He did not explain, and the officer watched in silence. Thorby stepped back at last. That's all I know. You missed a few. The wing marshal added some lights in yellow, some in red, then worked slowly, added half a dozen missing ships. But that's quite a feat to do from memory and a remarkable concentration of ideas. I see you included yourself. Maybe it does help to have a personal interest. He stepped back. Well, Baslam, you asked a question. Are you ready to answer it? I think galactic transport is in it up to here. Not everybody, but enough key people, supplying ships and repairs and fuel, financing maybe. Is this all physically possible otherwise? You know what they would say if you accused them of slave trading. Not the trade itself, at least I don't think so. Connected with it. First, they would say that they had never heard of any slave trade or that it was just a wild rumor. Then they would say that in any case, they just sell ships. And is a hardware dealer who sells a knife responsible if a husband carves up his wife? The cases aren't parallel. They wouldn't concede that. They would say that they were not breaking any laws or even stipulating that there might be slavery somewhere. How can you expect people to get worked up over a possible evil light years away? In which they're correct. You can't expect people to, because they won't. Then some smarmy, well-dressed character will venture the opinion that slavery, when it existed, was not so bad, because a large part of the population is really happier if they don't have the responsibilities of a free man. Then he'll add that if they didn't sell ships, someone else would. It's just business. Thorby thought of nameless little Thorbys out there in the dark, crying hopelessly with fear and loneliness and hurt. He thought of reeking holds of slaver ships, ships that might be his. One stroke of the lash would change his slimy mind. Surely, but we've abolished the lash here. Sometimes I wonder if we should have. He looked at the display. I'm going to record this. It has facets not yet considered together. Thanks for coming in. If you get more ideas, come in again. Thorby realized that his notion of joining the Corps had not been taken seriously. Marshal Smith, there's one other thing I might do. What? Before I join, if you let me, or maybe after, I don't know how you do such things, I could go out as Rudbeck of Rudbeck in my own ship and check those places, the red ones, ours. Maybe the boss can dig out things that a secret agent would have trouble getting close to. Maybe, but you know your father started to make an inspection trip once, and he was not lucky in it. Smith scratched his chin. We've never quite accounted for that one. Until you showed up alive, we assumed it was natural disaster. A yacht with 3 passengers, a crew of 8, and no cargo doesn't look like worthwhile pickings for bandits in business for profit, and they generally know what they're doing. Thorby was shocked. Are you suggesting that I'm not suggesting anything? But bosses prying into employees' sidelines have, in other times and places, burned their fingers. And your father was certainly checking. About the slave trade? I couldn't guess. Inspecting in that area. I've got to excuse myself, but do come see me again, or phone, or someone can come get you. Marshal Smith, what part of this, if any, can be talked over with other people? Any of it, as long as you don't attribute this to the Corps or to the Guard. But facts as you know them, he shrugged, who will believe you? Although if you talk to your business associates about your suspicions, you may arouse strong feelings against you personally. Some of those feelings are sincere and honest. Others, I wish I knew. Thorby was so late that Leda was both vexed and bursting with curiosity. But she had to contain it not only because of possible monitoring, but because of an elderly aunt who had called to pay her respects to Rudbeck of Rudbeck and was staying the night. It was not until next day, while examining Aztec relics in the 5th of May Museum, that they were able to talk. Thorby recounted what Garsh had said, then decided to tell more. I looked into rejoining the Guard yesterday. Thor! Oh, I'm not walking out, but I have a reason. The Guard is the only organization trying to put a stop to slave traffic. But that is all the more reason why I can't enlist now. He outlined his suspicions about Rudbeck and the traffic. Her face grew pale. Thor, that's the most horrible idea I've ever heard. I can't believe it. I'd like to prove it isn't true. But somebody builds their ships, somebody maintains them. Slavers are not engineers, they're parasites. I still have trouble believing that there is such a thing as slavery. He shrugged. 10 lashes will convince anybody. Thor, you don't mean they whipped you? I don't remember clearly, but the scars are on my back. She was very quiet on the way home. Thorby saw Garsh once more, then headed for the Yukon in company with the elderly aunt who had somehow attached herself. Garsh had papers for Thorby to sign and 2 pieces of information. The first action has to be at Rudbeck because that was the legal residence of your parents. The other thing is, I did some digging in newspaper files. Yes, your grandfather did give you a healthy block of stock. It was in stories about the whoop-de-doo when you were born. The Bourse Journal listed the shares by serial number, so we'll hit him with that, too, on the same day. We don't want one to tip off the other. You're the doctor. But I don't want you in Rudbeck until the clerk shouts oyez. Here's a mail drop you can use to reach me, even phone through if you have to, and right smartly you set up a way for me to reach you. Thorby puzzled over that requirement, being hemmed in as he was by bodyguards. Why don't you or somebody, a young man maybe, phone my cousin with a code message? People are always phoning her, and most of them are young men. She'll tell me, and I'll find a place to phone back. Good idea. He'll ask if she knows how many shopping days left till Christmas. All right, see you in court. Garsh grinned. This is going to be fun, and very, very expensive for you. Goodbye. Chapter 22. Have a nice vacation, Uncle Jack smiled at him. You've led us quite a chase. You shouldn't do that, boy. Thorby wanted to hit him, but although the guards let go of his arms when they shoved him into the room, his wrists were tied. Uncle Jack stopped smiling and glanced at Judge Bruder. Thor, you've never appreciated that Judge Bruder and I worked for your father and for your grandfather. Naturally, we know what's best. But you've given us trouble, and now we'll show you how we handle little boys who don't appreciate decent treatment. We teach them. Ready, Judge? Judge Bruder smiled savagely and took the whip from behind him. Bend him over the desk. Thorby woke gasping. Phew, that was a bad one. He looked around the small hotel room he was in and tried to remember where he was. For days, he had moved daily, sometimes half around the planet. He'd become sophisticated in the folkways of this planet, enough not to attract attention, and even had a new ID card, quite as good as a real one. It had not been difficult, once he realized that underworlds were much the same everywhere. He remembered now, this was America du Sud. The bed alarm sounded, just midnight, time to leave. He dressed and glanced at his baggage, decided to abandon it. He walked down the back stairs, out the back way. Aunt Lizzie had not liked the Yukon cold, but she put up with it. Eventually, someone called and reminded Lita that there were only a few shopping days to Christmas, so they left. At Uranium City, Thorby managed to return the call. Garsh grinned. I'll see you in the district court in and for the county of Rudbeck, Division 4, at 9:59 the morning of January 4th. Now get lost completely. So, at San Francisco, Thorby and Lita had a tiff in the presence of Aunt Lizzie. Lita wanted to go to Nice. Thorby insisted on Australia. Thorby said angrily, keep the car, I'll go by myself. He flounced out and bought a ticket for Great Sydney. He pulled a rather old washroom trick, tubed under the bay, and convinced that his bodyguard had been evaded, counted the cash Lita had slipped him as privately as they had quarreled publicly. It came to a little under 200,000 credits. There was a note saying that she was sorry it wasn't more, but she had not anticipated needing money. While waiting at the South American field, Thorby counted what was left of Lita's money and reflected that he had cut it fine, both time and money. Where did it all go? Photographers and reporters gave him a bad time at Rudbeck City. The place swarmed with them. But he pushed through and met Garsh inside the bar at 9:58. The old man nodded. Sit down. His Honor will be out soon. The judge came out, and a clerk intoned the ancient promise of justice. Draw nigh, and ye shall be heard. Garsh remarked, Bruder has this judge on a leash. Huh? Then why are we here? You're paying me to worry. Any judge is a good judge when he knows he's being watched. Look behind you. Thorby did so. The place was so loaded with press that a common citizen stood no chance. I did a good job, if I do say so. Garsh hooked a thumb at the front row. The galoot with the big nose is the ambassador from Proxima. The old thief next to him is chairman of the Judiciary Committee. And he broke off. Thorby could not spot Uncle Jack, but Bruder presided over the other table. He did not look at Thorby. Nor could Thorby find Lita. It made him feel very much alone. But Garsh finished opening formalities, sat down, and whispered, Message for you. Young lady says to say good luck. Thorby was active only in giving testimony, and that after many objections, counter-objections, and warnings from the bench. While he was being sworn, he recognized in the front row a retired Chief Justice of the hegemonic Ultimate Court who'd once dined at Rudbeck. Then Thorby did not notice anything, for he gave his testimony in deep trance surrounded by hypnotherapists. Although every point was chewed endlessly, only once did the hearing approach drama. The court sustained an objection by Bruder in such fashion that a titter of unbelief ran round the room and someone stamped his feet. The judge turned red. Order! The bailiff will clear the room! The move to comply started over protests of reporters, but the front two rows sat tight and stared at the judge. The High Ambassador from the Vegan League leaned toward his secretary and whispered. The secretary started slapping a steno machine. The judge cleared his throat. Unless this unseemly behavior ceases at once, this court will not tolerate disrespect. Thorby was almost surprised when it ended. Must therefore be conclusively presumed that Creighton Bradley Rudbeck And Martha Bradley Rudbeck did each die, are now dead, and furthermore did meet their ends in common disaster. May their souls rest in peace. Let it be so recorded. The court banged his gavel. If custodians of wills of decedents, if wills there be, are present in this court, let them now come forward. There was no hearing about Thorby's own shares. Thorby signed a receipt for certificates thereto in the judge's chambers. Neither Weemsby nor Bruder was present. Thorby took a deep breath as Garsh and he came out of chambers. I can hardly believe we've won. Garsh grinned. Don't kid yourself. We won the first round on points. Now it begins to get expensive. Thorby's mouth sagged. Rudbeck guards moved in and started taking them through the crowds. And we will conclude Thorby's legal adventures next time.